Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Isophit Q&A. I'm your host, Brad Thorpe. So today is kind of a great question because it showed that we're already having success with our Isophit family members. So the question is, hey, why did Isophit help me lower my blood pressure? So what they've noticed is that their blood pressure has lowered since getting their Isophit MSK. Now here's why I think Isometrics, and specifically Isophit, is so effective for lowering blood pressure. First and foremost, it's based off sound science, right? The Mayo Clinic and the American Heart Association have both come out and put out papers that state that isometric-based exercise is superior to various forms of resistance training and cardiovascular training for lowering blood pressure in a hypertensive population. If you want those studies, email me. My email is brad@isophit.com. Happy to send them to you because the world needs to know about this stuff. So not only is it built on science, but we recommend at Isophit that you use your product 6 days a week for a minimum of 3 hours. These studies that they said isometrics lowers blood pressure, we're looking at 24 minutes a week. That's it, just 24 minutes. We are looking at saying, hey, we want 3 hours, so 6 half-hour workouts. That's our whole 30 and 30 model and exercise protocol. And in addition to all that stuff, which is really crazy, let's get into sort of some of the why. Well, if you think of your circulatory system as nothing more than a series of tubes, you know, like those stretchy rubber things with a hole in the center. Well, if you put a tube on stretch, what will happen is that diameter thins. Right? It gets narrow. And we all know narrowing of arteries is traditionally thought of as a risk factor for elevating blood pressure. Want to know something? It is. So when we increase the isometric contractility of muscle structure, what happens is there's an increase in muscle tension causing an increase in diameter. And also what happens, which is really, really cool, that epithelial tissue, the actual structure that sort of makes that artery or vein, we'll talk about them in a second, but it makes that artery, well, it gets a little bit thicker. So it's more resilient to any sort of types of blockage. You're not going to have it rupture or anything like that because it's a little bit more resilient. Now, let's talk about something that's never discussed when discussing blood pressure. Venous return. How does that blood get back to your heart once it's been pumped out? So once it leaves that atrial system, that's the one with oxygen, and your venous side is the one with carbon dioxide, right? That toxic stuff you want to get out of your body before it produces inflammation and a whole bunch of other bad stuff you don't really want. Now, what happens on the venous return side of the equation? Well, before we get there, atrial side has 35% of your blood volume. Venous side has 65% of your blood volume. So let's be honest here. If we want to fix something, do you want to fix 35% or do you want to fix 65%? Well, I'm the guy who's going to say, well, I can get perfect on 35% and still fail. Or I can just fix 65% of it and be super successful. Let's go with that one, right? Why? Because it's way better than the 30. And I'm not saying don't worry about cardiovascular stuff on the atrial side. It's important, just not as important as the other side. No offense to the people who love this side. Those are your cardio junkies. Over here, though, in the world of isometrics, what can happen? When I increase the contractility of muscle, and we all know that isometric-based exercise enhances the muscle better than dynamic movement from a neurological connection perspective. So if I can get that muscle firing at a near optimal level, 95 through 100%, let's say, versus high 80s, right? 12 to 14% greater neural activation with isometrics. So what will happen is you end up with better return flow, right? Because muscles, it's a muscle pump. That's how the blood gets back. And more importantly, if you stretch a vein, what happens is those backflow valves misalign. They don't work very well. And you get blood pooling and potentially even varicose veins. If you want to avoid that, you also got to get your muscles a little bit tighter, those veins a little bit off stretch, and more importantly, just stop stretching the veins. Oh, there's one thing you can think about also. Anyways, there is a whole bunch of information for you guys to digest. This is not meant to be a 5-hour lecture, even though it could be. Anyways, I will see you guys on Monday for the next edition of Isophit Q&A. We'll see you then.